This is Ghost of Tsushima. We're here on PC Steam. Be sure to like the video. Subscribing is great as well. This is the latest PlayStation exclusive to make its way over to the PC platform, and it continues to be an exciting adventure seeing how these games fare, well, basically on, Steam and whatnot. So we're going to be diving into the technical elements and also the game itself, as I've played this through on the PS4 alongside its expansion and also checked it out on the PS5, and now I can finally see it at its absolute max and best here on PC. For context, I have the RTX 4090 with the i9-13900K. There is, in the top left there, a little bit of a frame rate counter, which seems to be giving my actual frames here, even though there is a lock due to my monitor refresh rate. So let's dive in and talk a little bit about the settings. So we've got gamepad support, we've got the Xbox controller there, which is always fun to showcase, but you can change things such as like vibration intensity, trigger effect, that kind of cool stuff. Obviously, you can have the DualSense too if you want. Mouse and keyboard options. There's this really cool in-game mode I want to talk about, so we'll show that off in just a sec. But difficulty, this game actually can be a little hard, so I do recommend if you do need to, you go down to a lower difficulty. Medium, it can actually be a little annoying at times, but all to their own. Lots of different difficulty options. Low intensity combat can help too in case you're struggling, as you might want to be able to play this even though your skill level isn't quite there. Photo modes, armor loadouts, gamepad assists, and kind of some visual settings. So I love to show off the Kurosawa mode. So this is really, really cool. It makes it look like those old black and white Japanese movies. It's got like a really cool style to it. It's got that little film grain, the scuffs and the marks of film. And it's just like a really, really cool aesthetic that I love to show off, just in case you didn't know it was an option in the game. And I do recommend playing just a little bit of it, just a little bit of the game using this setting, because I think it looks really, really cool. And I don't know how you're viewing this, but on my screen, like my monitor, this looks gorgeous. I mean, I think in general, the game looks just stunning, but like, yeah. And then we've got a bunch of audio options in your microphone for if you're doing the multiplayer mode. So we're going to turn off the Kurosawa mode because I'm sure that would be annoying for some people. And yeah, I guess it's time to talk about the technical elements of this experience. So first off, we have display, full screen, windowed exclusive full screen, which lets you adjust the frame rate a little bit. It does seem to lock to your monitor, but it's still internally, I'm actually getting the frame rate counted through Steam, which is great, as usually we just, uncap these bad boys and let them go. We've got HDR options, and the HDR in this is actually really, really good. And we've got a few different graphical upscaling technologies. We've got NVidia DLSS, which is always recommended and the kind of the no-brainer if you have the cards, AMD FSR 3.0, and XeSS. And then we've got a few different graphical upscale quality options. So I mean, I'm getting like, well over 100 something FPS, doing quality DLSS, so it's, the other ones aren't really needed unless you want to get even more insane frame rates. And then there's dynamic resolution scaling if you need that in order to adjust to these certain targets. We've got NVIDIA Reflex Low Latency on, and then Frame Gen. You can have Frame Gen AMD FSR 3 and DLSS Frame Gen. Now, those graphics modes, like turning any of those on to even try them, crashes the game. And I do have the latest NVIDIA drivers and everything like that. So yeah, I'm not going to show those off because I literally can't, because the game just crashes instantly. So I thought I would mention that. We're probably going to maybe play around with the upscale offerings, but it's really, kind of not really needed. It's just sort of like, unless you do want to get even more of a fluid experience, those options are there. And yeah, but it's just kind of like you're getting, such high levels, especially if you have the same setup as I have, where it's just kind of like a little pointless. But yeah, and then we have FSR 3.0, so, I think that does actually make the game look pretty good, FSR, but I do feel that like DLSS is just kind of, it is a bump up in terms of technology, and it just gives you better performance and stuff like that. And then we have XeSS, which I guess we can apply and kind of show how that one does too. See, even this seems to be kind of, well, yeah, beating and or doing the AMD FSR. Visually, you know, depending on the size of your screen and some of the little smaller things, that's obviously going to impact what you have. And then you can just turn it off too. So we're going to just turn that off and see what we get here. And even then, like, we're still getting over 60 FPS, right? So it's kind of like you can literally just have the resolution scaling off. But I mean, if you have like a screen that does over 100, you know, 120, 144 hertz, I think, you know, obviously using DLSS to achieve those higher frames is really quite a decent option. And then the dynamic resolution scaling if you need that. But I mean, you know, so we're just gonna have DLSS with quality mode on, and that's gonna give us the higher settings. Let's take a look at the graphics options. So in graphics, we have them very high. Everything is very high, 8 times. We can go to 16 times, I guess, if we need to. But everything very high. So we've got like our FOV. If you want to change your FOV in this one, your motion blur strength, texture quality, texture filtering. We got shadow quality, ultra, and you can just kind of see how that impacts sort of the game, the texture filtering quality, and level of detail in the environment we can bop down. You see how that kind of changes the distance, some of the rendering in the middle there with the trees. Terrain detail, obviously seeing the terrain quality change quite a bit. Volumetric fog, which a little harder to tell in this sort of scene because it's not crazy. Your depth of field quality, screen space reflections, which I guess you can actually see in the middle there because there's a little bit of a pond thing going on. Screen space shadows. See how that adjusts it. SAO quality. Kind of see how this kind of adjusts. Or sorry, the ambient occlusion, but SSAO quality, performance, those different options. Bloom on or off, vignette on or off, and water caustics, which, you know, kind of again need to be near water. So we're just going to turn this back on the very high, and we're just going to show off the presets here. So starting with very low presets, which obviously is going to bump up the frame rate, everything like that, very high. Especially with the resolution scaling and the, you know, all the assets like NVidia DLSS being on. And then we got low, medium, high, and very high. So we'll put on the 16 times and we'll see, yeah, see not much of a trade-off for the visual settings there. And finally, I do want to mention that this game does have a host of accessibility options in case you're having any sort of troubles. You know, kind of aiming, galloping, stuff like that. And it has the PlayStation overlay so that you can now own trophies, or earn trophies. Yes, you can own all the trophies in the world, but you can now earn trophies when you're playing the game, which is kind of cool if you're into that. We still don't seem to have the technology of cross saves, which is a bit of a bummer. And I'm really hoping that someday PlayStation figures out the technology to do that kind of thing. But I mean, even moving saves on your PlayStation across PlayStations is like a pain. So I don't know if they're going to be able to achieve that necessarily anytime soon. And I gotta say, it's like always nighttime when I'm going to record this game. It's driving me crazy. Like I try my best to get it like day, but no, not allowed. We'll do a little bit of fast traveling in order to fix that up there. So there's the technical elements of the game. I would say this is, aside from the crashing with the frame gen, like seriously, like it does not work. I've tried like 5 times doing this video to showcase that, and it just, yeah, it crashes the game frame gen. So it
Show me your skill.
It does not work out, right? Wait until I know the attack is real. He's gonna feint his attack. Oh no. So I would say, from like a technical standpoint, they did a very good job offering a plethora of different graphical modes. It seems to be at the quality that we've seen with a number of the other PlayStation kind of releases on PC, you know, kind of outside of The Last of Us Part 1, obviously. But, you know, like Horizon Forbidden West, obviously, I'm trying to think of the one before that, too, that was pretty good quality. But we've been trying out all the different PlayStation games on PC. I've been having a lot of fun doing that. And it's kind of nice to see more of them arrive to be checked out on PC. I hate... I genuinely hate these, like, pipe guys. They are the bane of my existence in this game. So yeah, if you're coming here looking for technical options, you got a 4090 and stuff like that, you are going to be absolutely just loving what this game has to offer. But let's talk about the game from a review standpoint. So as I kind of dove into, I am familiar with this game, having played it to review ahead of its launch on the PS4, and then checking out the PS5 version of the game. And it's definitely been an intriguing game. I always mention when I'm taking a look at this that essentially PlayStation beat Assassin's Creed to like making a samurai Assassin's Creed game, because like honestly there's no reason they shouldn't have been able to do this like Ubisoft with their franchise, because this game basically is that. You know, it's got its own flourishes, it's got its own sense of difficulty, its own like, you know, gameplay and style and everything like that. But like it really is, when you play this game, you genuinely are like, oh yeah, this is you know, this is basically Assassin's Creed, but with a different style to it, right? And it's got all the different like things you can do, all the different like adventures and quests and goals and activities and challenges, and there's a couple different areas. You kind of do the same thing over and over again. You go and you liberate areas and you go to the next spot. The difference is a lot more of a like higher fidelity, polished sort of like combat, if that makes sense, in terms of like, I don't know, not combat, but like narrative and cutscene and cinematics and storytelling. It's, you know, it's more like the PlayStation brand kind of thing, where they do have a very specific stylization to it. But this game does a really good job of kind of melding like these like realistic looking scenes with situations that are a lot more, am I getting attacked by wolves? are a lot more like aesthetically pleasing. The best way I can describe that is this game has a really distinct use of like color and overcolor in some scenarios, and it does that for very artistic aesthetic reasons that I think do make this game look really, really cool and give it a distinct vibe. There's also this element of using the wind. So usually you'd use the touchpad on the PlayStation, but you hold right on the D-pad for Xbox controllers and you go up, and it gives you this like soft wind telling you where you're supposed to go, and it sort of guides you along where you're headed. And that's a little different from other games where it's sort of like, hey, here's a blop on your map. But the more and more I play this, and the more and more I think about this game, the more I'm kind of like, it would be nice just to kind of directly be guided, because I'm just like, ugh, I don't got time for this. But no, like, I think the game itself is very, very well done. I wanted to do stealth, but like there's a lot of guys here. So the game is one where it is a bit of choice. Like, you can go off and you can do a lot of side adventures, and you can get like better armor, better tools, or you can just move through the main narrative, which in itself is very, very chunky. Oh, this is the area I should have entered from. It's a very chunky story where you are on this mission of like, you know, am I trying to be like a proper samurai, and the things you were taught, and it's really reflective upon your family and your uncle, and you dealing with like the sort of situations. Here's my Tsushima vision, but you know, it's basically like the eagle vision from Assassin's Creed. So yeah, that's a big part of it, is like honor, and then like your character dealing with that and deciding like the type of individual he's going to be. That makes sense. Like, it's funny too, because I don't think they do the themes perfectly well in this, because your guy's like, oh, I'm a samurai, I'd never do that, and then like 20 minutes later he's just like, okay, now that's funny that guy tripped like that. And then like 20 minutes later he's just like, okay, well, whatever, I'm just gonna start like assassinating people from the shadows and stuff. And it's kind of funny, but there's a good sense of like intense storytelling, character development. I actually quite like the cast of characters in this. You meet a lot of individuals across your adventures. It's kind of a bit of a love interest too with the one main lady, and it's interesting how it's explored and not really super dove into, but those elements are there. But yeah, like a lot of the game too though is traveling. Like, once you get somewhere it's a lot easier to travel, but like this game does start with like a lot of, you gotta go on your horse and you gotta travel around. Like, my deluxe edition horse is what my horse is called. Yeah, deluxe edition, which is kind of funny. But yeah, the game really is quite interesting, and it gives you a bunch of different choices for how you're going to handle combat. So, for instance, you have different like tools and weapons, and then you've also in the bottom right corner there, you've got different like stances for different individuals. So as the game progresses, you're going to unlock more stances that allow you to fight different types of individuals with different types of weapons. And you yourself will get different types of weapons and different types of tools in order to deal with the enemies that are around you. And you'll also gather different types of armor, and you'll improve your armor, and you'll become more and more powerful as you take on more and more challenges. Like your very traditional role-playing game, where you are attempting to, you know, improve your character and be able to take on more of the problems and threats that are around. And you can do them in different ways. You can be more direct in combat, you can be stealthy. The game's got a beautiful sense of like scale and visual change too to match the themes like night stealth missions, or maybe it might be really rainy, and the environmental elements of this game are quite beautiful. And I would fast travel around to kind of change the time of day, but I really do kind of like the aesthetic going on here, just because I do find it to be rather rather enchanting to kind of be like fighting it as like the sun sort of is coming down after like a long day of crazy combat and whatnot. So you do have a lot of like little, I guess you would say, stamina type things too. So what I'm kind of filling here is my bar that allows me to have health, and that really factors into things as well in your ability to be able to battle enemies. And like I said, some of it's really quite difficult and quite grueling at times, especially with the amount of enemies you have to face against. Sometimes you have like assistants that help you and stuff, and sometimes it's just kind of annoying. Some of the bosses are a little brutal in this one, honestly. But it really is a rather interesting and rewarding adventure. Like, I think it's one that you can have a lot of fun playing. And then this being the full version of the game, you get this extra sort of expansion element to it, where you get to go off on this like extra island thing, and it's really, really quite an interesting addition to the story. And then on top of that, they've got like a multiplayer kind of Legends thing. That for me wasn't like necessarily my sort of jam, but you know, it was a cool extra option if you do want to interact with others. So yeah, obviously I thought that was worth mentioning because it is kind of a big part of this. But yeah, just kind of a lot of ways to play, a really cool experience, one that you will get a lot of gameplay out of, you know, definitely like tens of hours for just like the main kind of story being chunky, and then if you want to go beyond that, you can, right? Like you can go and do all these extra missions and objectives and stuff, and the game really is catered to that sort of style of being able to be free and adventurous in this world here. Destroy the cache? How have I not liberated this? Is it because I haven't destroyed the cache? Okay, that's where it is. So yeah, like I said, you can literally use like a gust of wind as your guide of like where you're going and what you're doing. It's just like it's a really large adventure. It's one that I think you will genuinely have a good time with, especially if you're kind of a fan of like say Assassin's Creed, or you're a fan of the PlayStation games. This is like those, but it does its own sort of thing, has its own flair. It's got a very distinct set of like world and lore as your individual fights back against this invading Mongol force, and it's really, really quite intriguing. Like I said, I think they do a wonderful job with this game. It really is well crafted, well designed. The story, the setup, the music, the ambience, everything comes together in a very aesthetically pleasing way, in a very satisfying way from a gameplay standpoint, and just a setting standpoint. It's really a game you can quite get lost in. And if you really, really like what you're doing, you can spend a lot of time doing like side activities, side adventures. Like there is a lot of side crap that you can throw yourself into and get lost in. And I think that is really, really quite cool. I think they genuinely kind of nailed the setting and the style of this game. I think you will love it if you've never played it before. If you're revisiting it, I guess that really comes down to like, you know, how long ago have you played the game, and are you looking to like redo your adventure? And I think that's really going to be up to the type of player you are and whether or not you want to do an adventure right away in this, or if you want to maybe take some more time off, because it was a while ago, but it also wasn't that long ago. Like, a lot of this does feel fresh, but it's a great game, and I hope you check it out on PC because it's pretty well put together here.